Miami at Florida State. I think this is where most people are going to settle. This certainly seems like the game with the most on the line. Is the Hurricanes go to the Seminoles, Florida State coming off that big upset loss in Charlottesville to Virginia. The Canes are 4.5-point favorites, 6:30 p.m. on ABC. Trey, I feel like this game is so primed for overreaction because you have Miami, I believe, off a bye. They're fresh. We last saw them taking care of business against another in-state rival in Florida. They've already dispatched South Florida. And the one thing that's going to be left in most people's minds is Castellanos throwing an incomplete pass and the field storming and Squirrel White disappearing under a wave of humanity. I feel like there are a lot of reasons to like Miami in this game, but also don't want to just write off Florida State. They're at home. They're a good team. They were in a weird spot last Friday night, and it bit them.
I don't want to completely write off Florida State because I think the Alabama game does carry weight, but I'm wondering at this point in the season if the Virginia game carries more weight. I'm wondering if they've got Alabama in a really weird spot, opening the year with a new coordinator, new quarterback, and a really motivated quarterback and crowd and team on the Florida State side. And if they just kind of caught Alabama sleeping a little bit, I don't think anybody's arguing that Alabama is the same team today that they were back then. If they lined it up again, even in Tallahassee, would anybody hesitate to pick the Tide at this point after what we saw last week? I know I certainly wouldn't. So here's my concern for Florida State, and I'll get my pick here in a little bit, but the concern for Florida State is just the recent history that we've seen with them and the perception that we had going in. We do need to throw perceptions out a lot of times. Sometimes we are completely wrong. We do a lot of studying in the offseason, guys. And our conclusion on Florida State was, yeah, they made some really great additions. They're going to be a lot better, obviously, than the 2-10 bottom out that they were last year. But none of us were picking them as an ACC championship contender. None of us were picking them as a juggernaut in the ACC. And again, I'll credit you. Sometimes we need to throw out those preseason expectations and adjust as we go along. Wondering if Florida State has done enough for us to fully throw out those preseason expectations. I'm taking Miami to win and cover in this one. Miami has looked like a complete team at this point. Their offense has shown at times. Their defense has picked it up when their offense has struggled, like in the Florida game. They've won in multiple different ways. This is the best defense that Florida State will have played by far up to this point. And the offense, I'll grant you, the Florida State offense has been a wagon against some weaker competition and against an Alabama defense that didn't look like they wanted to be there. But this is a completely different animal on this Miami defense. The most talented top to bottom, two of the best players in all of college football are on that Miami defense. This feels like a spot where if Florida State does not find a way to win this game, I'm concerned that it could start a spiral. Because you look at Mike Norvell's record coming after losses. I have it on the screen right now. He is 6-17 as a head coach at Florida State following a loss. And I know the Florida State fans will say, hey, how many of those were last year all stacked together? A lot of them. Okay, but my point with that is they're extremely streaky, guys. When things are going good at Florida State, they're going really well, and they can reel off a lot of wins. But the second that crack has hit under Mike Norvell, it has spiraled pretty much every single time. There are not a lot of single losses. It usually leads to a losing streak. So if they can't take care of business at home against Miami in this spot, I'm really worried about what the rest of the season looks like.
Counselor, I appreciate your words. Well put together case. The bench now calls the defense for the Noles forward. And Garrett, I think you're playing the part of defense attorney here. Trey read some of the numbers, and that's not great. At the same time, though, I feel like the result for Virginia last week, yes, stunning, shocking, but then you look at some of the advanced numbers, and it's not like Florida State played poorly. I think they were inopportunistic at just about every turn. They had multiple chances to turn Virginia away, to salt that game away late, and they kind of, I mean, in Deuce Robinson's case, like literally fumbled it away. You like Florida State in this game at home. Explain the case to the people.
I do. I mean, I think that Florida State, look, okay, go back a couple of weeks. We're coming off that Miami beat in Florida, and, there's a lot of talk about, it didn't look that good, but, we've said it now. It's, you're coming up with a gritty win, right? You're just finding a way to. And that's good, right? Like, it's good that they've been able to get by, right? Miami has been able to get by and win their games. And there have been some that have been pretty close, like that Notre Dame game. Maybe the offense didn't look fantastic in spots, but the defense stepped up, made plays when they needed to. Again, that Florida game, they didn't really put anybody away. My big concern is that when I'm looking at that Florida game and how the offense didn't necessarily perform up to its standards, that's the best defense that they've played so far this year. I've got the passing efficiency defenses that Miami's gone against right now. They're going up against 33rd in Florida State. Florida was 38th, but then they've also played 71st, 79th, and Bethune-Cookman, who we don't have a number on that one. So I look, I'm not going to try to sit here and make the case that like Miami's terrible, right? I don't think that they're a terrible team, but this is definitely a test for their offense to see how real they are and to see, hey, like, I know that you just struggled against Florida and like I know that there was some rain involved, so like, okay, but can you do that against a defense that's even a little bit better than Florida's at stopping the pass game? And can you do it on the road is my big question, right? Can you go on the road? Can you handle business in a hostile environment against a team that truly cannot take another conference loss, right? Like, when you're looking at the teams in the ACC, I don't think a 2-loss ACC team gets into their conference championship game. There's too many good teams that I think will end up with 1 or 0, right? And so when I'm looking across this, I think that's a huge thing for them is they can't afford to take a loss. A little bit of wounded animal possibly here where they're saying, hey, we got to bounce back, and they got their stuff at home. And right now, I also think Florida State's probably the best offense that Miami has seen so far. I know that they took care of that Notre Dame offense. They've looked really good in recent weeks. Maybe give the freshman, quarterback there in his first start a little bit of leeway on not executing some stuff in week one. I'd really be curious to see how that game plays out now, right? Like, you were talking about the Alabama and Florida State game. I'm curious to see what happens if Notre Dame plays Miami, today, right? That'd be really interesting for me to see, hey, now that CJ Carr's developed a little bit and found his rhythm in the offense, what does that game look like? And at the end of the day, those are all hypothetical. These are all things that we could think about. But my big thing here is I just think that Florida State's got the chip on their shoulder. They're a physical team. They're fast. They play well. That game against Bama wasn't a fluke, right? They may not beat them today, but it definitely wasn't a fluke. They're a physical team. They can get after you. And I think there's just something about this offense that has that edge to them where they're going to be able to get in there, do what they need to do to end up winning this game at home. I do like Florida State to win this game outright. I think home field advantage is awesome. I just don't like this spot for Miami, right? The other question about this, too, is we've seen some teams coming off of their bye weeks a little bit slow out of the gate, right? You like to say that, hey, you got your bye week, you're all nice and fresh and rested up. You're also not seeing, game competition for 2 weeks. And if you come out of the, gates a little bit slow on the road and you let this team get up on you, put you in a negative game script, I get a little bit scared about Miami being able to climb back into this one. So I'm going to take Florida State to make a big statement win here. Trey, you said nobody's going undefeated this year. This is about that time that Miami needs to take their loss, right?
Could certainly be. It is an interesting spot, I think, for both teams. And I think you did a good job laying that out. Couple of interesting notes that I jotted down, guys. First of all, this is a battle between two of the best teams in extending drives. They're both extremely efficient at moving the chains, top 25 in third down conversions. Miami, though, is top 10 in the country in stopping those third down conversions. So you talk about, especially early on, not letting an offense build up any rhythm, not letting them find a way to drive the field. Miami has been one of the best at preventing an offense from kind of establishing itself early on in the game, right? Notre Dame had zero rhythm in that game until late, which I'll talk about in just a second. Florida State, meanwhile, top 20 in explosive plays. And you look statistically, they are the top scoring offense. They're the top total offense. I think a lot of that is being bolstered by the fact that they've played East Texas A&M and Kent State. But the point does remain, they know how to move the football. They know how to get it into the end zone as well. Two questions that I have entering this ball game. For Florida State, can you get to Carson Beck? Miami's offensive line is one of the best position groups in the entire country, and they might be the best offensive line in the nation as well, right? I mean, for me, they're probably one of 2 or 3 offensive lines right now that I would say are in contention for the Joe Moore Award. For Miami, my big question is, can you take away Deuce Robinson? He's been able to get just about whatever he wanted, and he almost was able to beat Virginia on the arm of Tommy Castellanos late in that ball game. Did he catch it? Did he not catch it? I guess we'll never know. ultimately ruled incomplete, and Virginia holds on in that game to win in overtime. But if Miami can take away Deuce Robinson, then it becomes concerning for Florida State on how I think they get the ball down the field in some of those chunk plays. Now, all of that being said, my biggest concern out of all the factors in this game, guys, is not something that Florida State brings to the table. It's actually what Miami has a track record of doing, and that's not closing out ball games. They get up early, and then Mario Cristobal likes to play with his food. How many years have we seen this at Oregon, at Miami, where he just takes his foot off the gas, and all of a sudden, Shannon Dawson and that offensive staff get really vanilla. Even against Florida, where you have a 26-7 lead or final in that game, Miami could have blown the doors off Florida if they just kind of kept trying to move the football. And while Florida, I think, has a good defense, Miami was kind of content to just play field position, bide their time, run the clock out. If you do that against a Florida State team that is desperate after losing at Virginia and will be hungry to win at home in a huge rivalry spot, we've seen that cost Mario in the past. So I think Miami's the better team. I think they've got the better defense. I love that offensive line. I think Miami jumps out to an early lead. I'm concerned if they can hold on to it and win comfortably. So I'm going to take Miami to win, but give me Florida State plus the 4.5. I think this gets kind of weird late in the fourth quarter. We have a very close rivalry matchup by the time that all is said and done.
I need you to break the tie, and you just found a way to sit right on that fence there. So congratulations.
Well, hey, we've got 2 taking the Canes. We've got 2 taking Florida State plus the points. I think everybody's a winner in this situation. We'll let the Jimmies and the Joes determine the tiebreaker. YouTube comments, Spotify comments, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are participating in our content, we'd love to know. You taking the Canes, the Noles, somewhere in between, like maybe me riding on the fence. Let us know.